Right now, inside the confines of the Indianapolis Colts training facility at Grand Park, there's a high-stakes standoff reaching an absolute boiling point. We aren't just looking at your standard run-of-the-mill depth chart battle here. What's happening in Indy is a rigid organizational gridlock that could literally define the entire landscape of the AFC South this season. Think about it. On one hand, you have an established starter who just secured his financial future. On the other, a former fourth overall draft pick who is actively, publicly seeking an exit strategy. But as we know all too well in the National Football League, getting exactly what you want is rarely that simple. The front office is absolutely refusing to blink, and the tension is palpable. Let's get into this explainer and unpack exactly what is happening.
You know how these front office press conferences usually go, right? Lots of PR spin, vague platitudes about exploring all options and doing what's best for the player. Well, Colts assistant general manager Ed Dodds just bypassed all of that and built a brick wall right in front of the exit doors. When he was asked about balancing a player's trade request against the team's need for depth, he didn't mince words. He flatly stated, "I think you take care of your own team first." He definitively, unmistakably slammed the brakes on Anthony Richardson's highly publicized trade request. And the message here? It is crystal clear. Not just to Richardson, but to the other 31 teams in the league. The Colts are not holding a fire sale. If you want to acquire their premium backup, you are going to have to make an offer that they simply cannot refuse. Because otherwise, this front office is perfectly content holding on to an unhappy asset.
Section 1. The Stalled Trade Request.
To truly grasp why the air is so thick with tension in Indianapolis right now, we have to look back at how this franchise arrived at such an uncomfortable crossroads. You don't just wake up one random Tuesday with a top 5 draft pick demanding a trade while relegated to the second-string offense. The rise and fall of expectations here is honestly breathtaking. It's like whiplash. Let's rewind a bit. Back in April 2023, Anthony Richardson is drafted number 4 overall. He is brought into the building to be the ultimate franchise cornerstone, the guy who is going to lead them for the next decade. Fast forward to the 2025 season, and the script completely flips on its head. Daniel Jones takes over as the starter, effectively seizing the reins of the entire offense. Richardson struggles to cement his grip on the role, dealing with a lack of consistency and injuries. And then, the harsh reality sets in. By February 2026, the Colts make the massive decision to decline Richardson's fifth-year rookie option, permanently relegating him to backup duties. Recognizing the writing firmly on the wall, Richardson formally requests a trade. In less than 3 calendar years, we've gone from the euphoria and fireworks of draft night to an active, desperate attempt to sever ties. It really just goes to show how rapidly the tectonic plates shift in this league.
Yet, despite all this chaos happening behind closed doors, we absolutely have to look at how this is being handled publicly by the player himself. The crucial takeaway here is that Richardson is not tearing this locker room apart. This quote from him is a massive validation of his professionalism. He essentially says, "Look, I don't know what's going on with the trade, but I'm here right now." He's reporting to camp, he's going through the motions, he's putting in the grueling summer work. And honestly, it is completely valid for a highly competitive, incredibly talented young quarterback to want to actually play football rather than sit holding a clipboard behind an established starter. But he's showing up. He's not pulling a dramatic stunt, he's not staging a holdout. And the ultimate irony of all this? His cooperative behavior might actually make it significantly easier for the Colts to justify keeping him in the building. Because he isn't becoming a massive media distraction, he's taking away any real urgency for Ed Dodds to panic and ship him out for pennies on the dollar.
Section 2. Rise of Daniel Jones. Now, you really can't tell the story of Anthony Richardson's stalled career without taking a long, hard look at the man who actually forced him onto the bench in the first place. You don't just unseat a number 4 overall pick by accident. You have to take that job by force. You have to unequivocally prove to the coaching staff that the offense operates at a fundamentally higher level when the ball is in your hands. And this situation is a brutal, unforgiving reminder of the zero-sum nature of the NFL. There are only 32 of these starting jobs on planet Earth. On one side of the coin, we have Daniel Jones. Last year, in 2025, he played the absolute best football of his entire career. He wasn't just out there managing games and handing the ball off, he was commanding Shane Steichen's offense with a level of precision and confidence that the Colts just hadn't seen in years. That performance was undeniable, and it earned him a highly lucrative multi-year contract extension this offseason. The team fully committed to him as their undisputed franchise starter. But then, on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, you have Richardson. Fifth-year option declined, now actively seeking a fresh start somewhere, literally anywhere else. One player's magnificent breakthrough is directly, inextricably linked to another player's stalled trajectory. Section 3. The Roster Depth Strategy.
So, the multi-million-dollar question is this. Why won't the Colts just grant the trade? If Daniel Jones is definitively the guy, why keep an unhappy, highly drafted backup on the active roster? To really unpack Ed Dodds' overarching strategy here, we have to dig into the psychological scarring of this front office. We have to look at the harsh, traumatic reality of recent team history. Just look at this utterly devastating sequence of events from the 2025 season. The Colts came out of the gates absolutely on fire, a dominant 7-1 record. They looked like an absolute lock for a deep, terrifying playoff run. And then, the literal worst-case scenario unfolded right before their eyes. Brutal, season-altering injuries sidelined both Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. The situation became so incredibly desperate, the quarterback room was so painfully depleted that the franchise was literally forced to bring Philip Rivers out of retirement just to field a functioning offense on Sundays, and the result? A catastrophic collapse. They lost 8 of their final 9 games. That included a soul-crushing 7-game losing streak to close out the year. They finished 8-9, they missed the playoffs entirely. Look, that is the kind of collapse that permanently alters how an executive thinks. It costs people their jobs, it is deeply traumatic for a front office, and it completely rewrites their philosophy on roster building.
So when you take that trauma and use it to map out the 2026 roster, the current standoff suddenly makes perfect, logical sense. Daniel Jones is safely locked in as QB1. But Anthony Richardson? He is the ultimate premium insurance policy. The Colts front office looked at the total devastation of 2025 and made a conscious decision that hoarding highly capable quarterbacks is an absolute necessity, completely regardless of anyone's hurt feelings or trade requests. They even went out and got Riley Leonard, who is currently developing as their emergency QB3. Ed Dodds knows, deep down, that if Daniel Jones goes down with an injury in Week 4, having Anthony Richardson ready to step onto the field is the literal difference between saving a season and repeating the absolute disaster of 2025. That is exactly why the trade block is closed. They aren't holding on to Richardson out of spite. They are refusing to trade him because they fundamentally believe they cannot survive a grueling 17-game season without him in the building.
Section 4. Training Camp Struggles.
But look, strategy drawn up on a whiteboard in a front office is one thing. Execution on the grass in real time is an entirely different beast. Let's pivot away from the executive chess match and look at the stark physical reality currently playing out under the scorching sun at Grand Park. Because right now, the offensive side of the football is facing a massive, glaring reality check. On day 12 of training camp, the atmosphere was intense, it was suffocating, and it was completely dominated by the defense. Defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo has engineered a defensive unit that is just flying to the football right now. They didn't just challenge head coach Shane Steichen's passing offense, they put it in an absolute straitjacket. For a team that just committed heavily financially to its starting quarterback, seeing the offense thoroughly and systematically dismantled in 11-on-11 drills is exactly the kind of friction that breeds midsummer panic. Let's actually break down exactly what happened out there on that field. It was, without a shadow of a doubt, a brutal practice session for the newly extended franchise starter. Daniel Jones faced relentless swarming pressure all afternoon. He managed only a single completion past 10 yards, a deep, isolated shot to Ashton Doolin. Beyond that one play, the passing lanes simply did not exist. The pressure eventually culminated in a totally unforgiving sequence to end his 11-on-11 period. Back-to-back interceptions. First, the pass rush swarmed him in the pocket, Laiatu Latu got his hands up and tipped the ball at the line of scrimmage, and cornerback Mekhi Blackman was right there to take it to the house for a devastating pick six. And it didn't stop there. On the very next sequence, Jones tried to force a deep post down the field to Laquan Treadwell, left way too much air under the football, and watched safety Cam Bynum easily undercut the route for yet another interception. It's a very harsh reminder that a massive, multi-year extension does not suddenly buy you immunity from a ferocious, well-schemed pass rush.
Now, in a normal quarterback controversy, this is the exact moment you'd expect. The starter struggles, the backup steps in, completely lights up the defense, and sends the local media into an absolute frenzy. But that is not what happened here. Anthony Richardson stumbled just as hard. Even taking reps with the first-team offense against the second-team defense, he just couldn't capitalize on the opportunity. The mistakes started early on for him. A completely fumbled jet sweep exchange with rookie receiver Deion Burks right out of the gate. From there, he was repeatedly stuffed on his rushing attempts and found absolutely zero rhythm throwing the football. His session ended rather fittingly, forcing a badly underthrown corner route that was easily intercepted by Jalen Jones. Looking at this neutrally, neither quarterback had any sort of answer for the complex looks the defensive coaching staff was throwing at them all day long.
But we also have to be completely fair to the quarterbacks here. They are not operating in a vacuum, and they are not entirely to blame for this offensive sputtering. The supporting cast's inconsistencies are massively exasperating these struggles. While tight end Tyler Warren and receiver Josh Downs have been highly reliable targets, catching everything thrown their way, the rest of the Colts receiving room was deeply plagued by drop passes throughout the entirety of the day. When your offensive line protection is breaking down, and the few times you actually manage to deliver an accurate pass under pressure, it just bounces straight off your receiver's hands, the entire offensive operation grinds to a complete halt. It really begs the question of whether the roster construction specifically surrounding these quarterbacks is fundamentally flawed at its core.
Section 5. What happens next? So, we know the complicated history, we understand the front office's strategy, and we've seen the glaring struggles on the practice field. Now, let's look at the looming, unavoidable consequences of building a roster like this. The crucial point you have to understand is this: keeping an unhappy, highly talented backup is a ticking time bomb. It's a strategy that looks great on paper, but it only actually works in reality if the starter strings together dominant, unassailable performances week in and week out. A crowded quarterback room absolutely requires undeniable results from QB1. If Daniel Jones struggles out of the gate in September, if the offense continues to sputter, if the deep ball just isn't connecting, and if the team ends up dropping a couple of crucial early games, the noise surrounding Anthony Richardson is going to become deafening. Fans and media alike will be loudly calling for the former number 4 overall pick to step in, regardless of whether a trade request is still sitting on the GM's desk or not.
Which naturally leads us to the first massive, looming, unanswered question hanging over this entire franchise right now. Does this wide receiver room actually have enough firepower to support a deep, meaningful playoff run? We saw the agonizing drops in camp. We saw the passing offense completely locked down by their own defense. Even if Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson miraculously play to the absolute peak of their physical abilities, do they currently have the elite weapons on the perimeter required to compete in an AFC that is absolutely loaded with high-octane offenses? If the front office expects their quarterback to instantly elevate the players around him, they might be asking for the physically impossible if those players can't consistently catch the football when it hits them in the hands.
And finally, this leaves us with the ultimate, franchise-defining debate surrounding Ed Dodd's aggressive depth strategy. Is this intense roster hoarding going to save the team from another catastrophic, heartbreaking collapse like we saw back in 2025? Or is it going to slowly divide the locker room and fracture the offense from within? Will keeping this premium insurance policy ultimately pay off in December, or will it just create an endless, exhausting media distraction starting in Week 1?
That is the incredibly high-stakes drama currently unfolding in Indianapolis, and NFL Nexus will be right here to explain every single snap and consequence as this season develops. If you found this explainer valuable, make sure to hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and seriously consider becoming a channel member today to help support the deep dives we do here. But right before we get out of here, I want to hear from you. Drop your opinion down in the comments below. I'll leave you with this one final thought to chew on. Can an uncomfortable, crowded, high-tension quarterback room actually survive the grueling, totally unpredictable reality of a 17-game NFL regular season? Let me know what you think, and we'll see you on the next one.